My name is Stephen Kick, and I am the CEO of Night Dive Studios.
Tell us about Night Dive Studios, because it's kind of a unique studio, at least from the outside looking in.
Yeah, so what we do is we specialize in finding old IP, classic games that you can't get anymore for various reasons, and then our job is to untangle that mess and bring them to a wider modern audience. Most famously, we were responsible for bringing back the System Shock franchise, Turok, Dinosaur Hunter, Strife, which was an early id-powered game, Forsaken, which was a game by Iguana Entertainment and Acclaim. Some obscure ones, Harvester, Seventh Guest, 11th Hour, a lot of classic point and click. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. And as we get further and further, down the line, more and more titles are kind of opened up to us as they lose, compatibility, or they lose the developers that have been supporting them up to this point. For some of our DOS-based games, we'll use a wrapper like DOSBox, which is widely available, or something like ScumVM for any of the humongous titles that we did, like Putt Putt, Pajama Sam, that kind of thing.
You brought back a lot of Putt Putt games.
All the Putt Putt games. And then with some of our other games like Turok, Dinosaur Hunter, we were lucky enough to get the source code for that. And then that was a great use case for an engine that we were building internally that allowed us to emulate that game, but using the original code so that we could add in our own features like widescreen support or the ability to change the FOV, multiplayer for Turok 2 in that case.
Tell me about some of the ones you were most proud of, or that you were really personally happy to get back out there.
Well, Turok is a really big one for me. It was the first 3D accelerated game I ever played on my computer. For those of us who are old enough to remember what it was like, to play in software mode before that huge leap, it leaves a very lasting impression on you. It actually came bundled with my Voodoo 1, my 3D FX card, and I remember the first time booting it up and it was like, shit, nothing is ever gonna top this. So seeing that run at 60 FPS on a Nintendo Switch today is quite an achievement for me. So.
Was System Shock 2 the first game that you guys brought back?
Yeah, so what ended up happening was my fiance at the time and I were working as character artists at Sony Online Entertainment. And we got to a point where we needed to travel. We needed to do something exciting. We needed to kind of recharge our creative batteries. And so we quit and we piled into our Honda Civic and we drove across the border into Tijuana. And we drove all the way through Mexico, all the way through Central America, all the way to the Panama Canal over the course of almost a year. And during that time, I brought this little Chromebook and I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna play Grim Fandango, I'm gonna play Full Throttle, Fallout 2, all these games that inspired me to want to become somebody in the industry. And I got to System Shock 2, and it's like a cold, rainy night in Guatemala, thunder's like crashing, and I'm like ready to play. And the game just won't start. So I'm like hooked up to the satellite internet. I'm like, okay, well, they're gonna get mad at me for downloading this from GOG because it's 400 megabytes or something like that. And I get to GOG, it's not there. It turns out to be like their #1 requested game. So I immediately just started this sleuthing about on the internet. Like, what happened to this game? I mean, it's widely considered to be one of the best PC games of all time. Like, there's something wrong here. And my investigation led me to an insurance company in the Midwest called Star Insurance Company. And they had claimed the trademark and the intellectual property of Looking Glass when they went bankrupt. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, what are you doing with this IP? They're like, well, we don't really know. Do you want to do System Shock 3? And
Jesus Christ.
I'm like, okay, well, what if we just released Shock 2? We'll just put it on GOG, we'll port it to Steam, and we'll see how it goes. Oh, well, nobody's asked us to do that before. Sure, why not? So we figured that out, and we brought the game to GOG. They immediately called bullshit. They didn't believe me, because I was just, I'm a kid at the time. So they put it up, it ended up being just a smash hit. And it kind of kickstarted the entire Night Dive business.
Yeah. So I guess how did the current System Shock project then come about? Because it seemed like you had that relationship with Star, but then you've done like an incredible amount of work in the intervening years.
It was kind of always something that I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to do, because System Shock 1 is just, it's old. I mean, for the lack of a better word, it's difficult to get into if you're not prepared to put yourself back in that 1994 state of mind. There's no mouse look. And so that alone, it's like you get in there and you're like, wait a minute, I have to like click and drag to move, and I'm also expected to shoot and puzzle solve and do all this complex stuff. And so, yeah, bringing that back and at least just implementing mouse look in the original was something we wanted to do, which we did with the enhanced edition. And it only brought us that far. But we just kept seeing the potential of bringing it to Unreal and sprucing up the graphics and making something that could not necessarily compete with like a AAA product, but would have the depth and the gameplay that the original had that we find kind of lacking in a lot of current releases today. Our plan was just to entirely self-fund and use crowdfunding. At the time, we weren't interested in working with the publisher. Up to that point, all the Night Dive projects had been internal, and we really liked the way that worked. I found some amazing developers that loved the game. And I even got in touch with the original concept artist, Rob Waters, who did the BioShock games. And it just came together so quickly. And we created that demo, that prototype internally, just to see what we could do, what we could accomplish. And we decided, we should just give this out as an example of what to look forward to with our Kickstarter. So what happened was, immediately after the Kickstarter, we realized that Unity just wasn't going to be an appropriate engine for us to use. And one of the things that I learned from the very beginning, even when I was in school, is like an engine swap is not a trivial thing. You're basically starting over. And if you're lucky, you might be able to reuse some of your art assets, maybe some of your code. And so it kind of set us at square one. The people that we had brought onto the team at that point weren't really in love with the aesthetic that we had established in that original demo. And so that caused some initial rifts between team members. Rob Waters, he left. We weren't seeing his vision through the way that he had, thought we were going to. We lost our lead artist. We lost pretty much everybody that was part of that original Unity team. And so the project kind of veered off into this new direction that was designed to take advantage of the hype that we were getting and the attention that we were getting from publishers after the Kickstarter had become successful, which was not our intention when we started it. We had to look for additional funding at that point because the team had created something that the publishers wanted more of. And that just increased the scope and increased our budget to a point where it became unsustainable. We eventually got to a point where we had exhausted all of our opportunities with all the publishers that we talked to. And we had multiple prototypes of this System Shock game that all didn't really resemble one another. And they kept getting further and further away from that original Unity demo. At that point, I was like, our Kickstarter backers are really upset at us. I feel like we betrayed them in a way. We put the project on hold for like a week while we restructured, and I tried to convince the original Unity team to come back. It's like, look, I'm really sorry, guys. Like, what can I do to make this right? This is the game we all wanted to make. Let's make this happen. And they all came back. We got Rob Waters back, which is very important to maintain that aesthetic and bring that back to, what Shock is. It got really, really hard. For the first time in Night Dive's history, we faced, real adversity. From that moment, we decided, let's live stream our development. I mean, why not? There's not a lot of people doing this, and there's a good reason for that. I mean, game development is not pretty sometimes, and you make mistakes like while you're working, or sometimes you'll spend weeks working on something to have it, trashed, or, it's not good enough. And we basically asked everybody on our team, like, hey, who wants to do this? You don't have to, I'm not pressuring you, but we'll probably win back a lot of our support and we'll get some new fans. And that's exactly what happened. And we got our crowd back, we got our support back, and our Discord channel is 8,000 strong, and we have a whole group of people that are very supportive and that are cheering for us on the way here. And it's like, well, yeah, this is how you motivate developers. So
you've managed to work on one of your favorite games of all time. What other games out there are ones that you think the world of video games should have access to that they don't?
No One Lives Forever.
Yeah. It's just, it's legal hell, that one?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah, its rights have just been split across the four winds, and it's been a real challenge to get all the parties together to talk about, you know, why we should do this and how we can do it. It's difficult. There's still a lot of conversations that we need to have, but I mean, I'm never gonna stop. It'll happen one way or the other.